Yellow Jackets follows a general pattern in Season 3 where adults are beginning to fall back into the behavioral patterns and hierarchies that they once had in the wilderness. Throughout the wilderness plotline, we see characters like Shauna, Thaisa, Natalie, and Misty at the forefront, while characters like Melissa linger in the background. Whether this was intentional or just an artifact of the show's shifting focus as we move along into the later parts of the story is not going to be talked about in this video. Instead, I wanted to shed some light on Melissa as a character who is very quickly becoming one of my favorite characters in the show so far, one of the more intriguing and interesting characters. So the reason I made this video was that over the past weeks that Yellow Jackets Season 3 was airing, I noticed some discussion on social media claiming that adult Melissa was acting out of character or was poorly written or was difficult to understand. And I think this is completely wrong, and I know that Melissa is best understood within the context of what I mentioned earlier. The adult characters are reverting back to their previous wilderness behaviors and hierarchies. Her actions in the adult timeline map almost perfectly onto her actions in the wilderness. So let's take a look at that. So the first topic we have here is how Melissa actually seeks Shauna out in both the wilderness and the adult timelines. By taking a look at the wilderness timeline, we can understand both Melissa's character and Shauna's character through their interactions. So in the wilderness, Melissa was nearly invisible until she intentionally chose to secretly invade Shauna's space. She drew out Shauna's attention by leaving things in that space for Shauna to find, and that is what we see in this video here playing off to the side. I feel that Melissa is sort of a lesser version of Shauna. They both crave the excitement of the wilderness and the thrill, but Shauna embodies a complete lost cause psychopath beyond saving, whereas Melissa is a slightly more restrained version, in my opinion. In the adult timeline, Melissa appears to have a happy family with a wife and 2 kids. However, it's important to note that Melissa married the daughter of a woman they killed in the wilderness. Melissa also kept an audio recording of that woman's murder while married to her daughter. This is completely the work of a psychopath and someone who still harbors that darkness or wilderness or that Lottie was speaking of in the final episode with Callie. Similar to how Shauna collected hair as trophies in the wilderness and also kept journals of everything that happened in the wilderness as a sort of memento or way of reliving what was happening, I think Melissa's decision to keep the audio recording serves a very similar purpose. Although the literal words in the letter that Melissa sent to Shauna might imply that she was offering up the audio recording to help Shauna heal, I think that Melissa actually did this to show that she too, like Shauna, has kept some memorabilia from the wilderness and remembers and wants to remember the wild and crazy things that happened to them out there. I think that what Melissa did in the adult timeline, marrying Hannah's daughter and keeping the audio recording of Hannah's murder, is extremely psychopathic, and on some level it seemed like she wanted Shauna to know that this inner darkness was still present within her and that there was another Yellow Jacket who held on to the events of the wilderness just as Shauna had. The next topic I had here was sort of how Melissa chooses to prove herself to Shauna. So once again, in the wilderness, Melissa needed to show Shauna that she was capable of similar acts of violence and that she was similarly minded to Shauna herself. Shauna tasked Melissa with cutting Ben's Achilles heel, and Melissa did it. And from that point forward, they were publicly united as a pair, with Shauna specifically encouraging Melissa by saying, "You shouldn't be afraid of the bad parts of you either," before she does what she does to Ben. In the adult timeline, very similarly, Melissa once again proves her capacity for cruelty and violence when she stabs Van without hesitation and flees the scene. Also, when she reaches for the knife while Shauna is sitting at the table, which we will see a bit later. And a lot of people were a bit confused about why Shauna and Melissa were behaving toward one another the way that they did in the adult timeline, why what happened to Van happened to her, why Melissa didn't kill Shauna back during the final hunt in the wilderness. So I'm going to try and give my thoughts on the way that Shauna and Melissa fight. Throughout this season, we see a game of chicken sort of being played between the two of them in both the wilderness and adult plotlines. They fight each other, but they don't fight to kill. Or they scare each other, but they never go to the point where they're actually going to kill the other person. So, in the wilderness, Melissa's interactions with Hannah sparked some anger and jealousy in Shauna. After overhearing Melissa discuss Hannah's children and her life back home, Shauna and Melissa get into a heated argument where Shauna verbally abuses Melissa and then fires her rifle at her. The bullet grazes Melissa's jacket without actually piercing Melissa, injuring her, or killing her. Later, in the wilderness, during episode 10 of season 3, the finale, Melissa attacks Shauna during the final hunt, where we sort of have a reversal of this situation where Melissa has the upper hand. She's the one who shocks Shauna by doing something that Shauna didn't expect she was going to do, nearly bringing Shauna to the brink of death, but then ultimately releasing her and not killing her. I think that was very deliberate to have them both make each other understand that they could kill the other person. And then in the adult timeline, when Shauna locates Melissa, the two have a bit of a scuffle. Partly driven, once again, by Shauna's jealousy over Melissa seemingly having a happier life, away from her former identity as a yellow jacket. In this case, in this scene here, you can see Melissa reach for the knife very quickly before Shauna subdues her. Shauna even reaches the point where she could kill Melissa, but instead forces her to commit an act of self-harm, which is that Melissa should eat the part of her arm that Shauna bit off. Now, Melissa escapes, but I know that this isn't the end of Melissa. On a meta level, you don't hire Hilary Swank just to have her run off into the sunset at the end of the third season, even though there's a fourth season coming. But even from the story's perspective, if the pattern that we see previously continues with the adult timeline mirroring the behaviors and hierarchies of the wilderness timeline, then I predict that Melissa will ambush Shauna at some point, while Taissa and Misty are constructing and acting out their plot against Shauna, leading to another life or death situation where Melissa has the upper hand, where Melissa ultimately refuses to kill Shauna once again and teams up with her against whoever. So what's next? In my opinion, like I just said, Melissa won't kill Shauna. Despite her hatred, Melissa recognizes that she harbors that same evil and wilderness within her that Shauna has. There are parallels between the adult timeline, where Melissa manages to kill Van after Van hesitates, and her own hesitation against killing Shauna at the end of the season. Perhaps Melissa's killing of Van was a way to show the audience that her refusal to kill Shauna was not due to a lack of ability to kill a person, but due to her just not wanting to kill Shauna specifically. It could also be a way of showing that Melissa has finally accepted this side of herself where she was not able to kill a person in the wilderness. She is able to do it now. That barrier of hesitation that she had back then is no longer there. So all that being said, I think the final showdown in season 4 will be between Shauna and Melissa versus Thaisa and Misty, with Walter playing a role somewhere in there that I can't quite figure out yet. I'm still really sad that Lottie and Natalie are gone from the story. I would have loved to have seen the trauma of the wilderness affect them as adults more, and how they would have fit in and reverted back into these old behaviors and hierarchies in the adult timeline. Although many believe that Lottie coped and thrived just as well as Shauna in the wilderness, I see it the complete opposite way. I view Lottie as someone who couldn't cope at all. She distanced herself from reality. She ejected herself from any sense of responsibility. She constantly wanted to be the one who pulled the queen card. And she didn't want to acknowledge that she was the one who led everyone into this downward spiral of paranoia and uncivilized carnal behavior. I think that in the adult timeline, Lottie refused to take responsibility for anything. She validated her own delusions again and again, emphasizing that what they were doing wasn't wrong, that it was supposed to happen, that it was natural, and so on and so forth. But all those characters are gone now, and this is not a video on Lottie and Natalie. So yeah, I'm starting to warm up to Melissa quite a bit as a character. She's become one of my favorite characters in the series. I'm very excited to see what they do with her character and how she serves as a point of conflict for Shauna. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Shout out to Jenna Burgess and Hilary Swank for playing both versions of these characters. I can't wait to see what they do in season 4. Yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments, where you think Melissa's storyline is going, where you think Shauna's storyline is going in relation to Melissa, and how you think Thaisa and Misty will fare in season 4.